I stood in my own driveway, soaked to the bone, staring at my front door like it belonged to a stranger. Rain hammered down on my shoulders as I fumbled with keys that suddenly meant nothing. My house looked exactly the same. Same red brick, same white shutters, same flower boxes I had painted last spring. But the lock was different. I tried every key on my ring twice, then 3 times. My heart pounded harder with each failed attempt. Behind their curtains, I could see neighbors watching me struggle like some kind of entertainment. 7 years I had lived in this house. 7 years of mortgage payments, of mowing the lawn, of waving hello to these same people who now watched me drown in my own front yard. That was the moment I realized the HOA had declared war on me. What I did not know was that they had just handed me the perfect weapon to destroy them all. The business trip to Denver was supposed to be routine. 7 days of meetings, client dinners, and hotel rooms that all looked the same. I had been traveling for work for 15 years, and this felt like just another week away from home. My neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, had agreed to water my plants and grab my mail. Everything seemed normal when I left. The flight back was delayed 3 hours due to storms. By the time I reached my neighborhood, it was past midnight and the rain was coming down sideways. My headlights cut through the darkness as I pulled into my driveway, exhausted and ready to collapse into my own bed. I grabbed my suitcase and laptop bag, jogging through the rain toward my front door. The porch light was on, just like always. I reached for my keys, already thinking about a hot shower and 8 hours of sleep. That was when my world turned upside down. The key would not go in. I stared at the lock, confused. Maybe the rain was making my hands shake. I tried again, slower this time. The key did not even fit. I pulled out my phone's flashlight and examined the lock closely. It was completely different. New, shiny, high-security deadbolt that looked like it belonged on a bank vault. My stomach dropped. Someone had changed my locks while I was away. I stood there in the rain, water dripping from my hair, trying to process what was happening. This was my house, my mortgage, my name on the deed, but I could not get inside. I called the locksmith service, hands shaking as I dialed. The technician arrived 40 minutes later, took one look at the lock and shook his head. "This is a Grade 1 security lock," he said, rain dripping from his hood. "Whoever installed this did not want it picked or bumped. This is serious hardware." "Can you get me in?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "Not without destroying the door frame. And honestly, if this is not your lock, I could get in trouble for breaking and entering." I showed him my driver's license, my mortgage statements, my utility bills, everything with my name and this address. He looked sympathetic but firm. "I believe you, but I cannot risk it. You need to sort this out with whoever changed the locks." By now, lights were coming on in neighboring houses. I could see faces in windows, watching the drama unfold. Mrs. Peterson's curtains twitched, but she did not come outside. Neither did anyone else. These were people I had lived next to for years, and now they watched me like I was some kind of criminal. The locksmith left, and I was alone in my driveway with nowhere to go. Hotels were booked solid due to a convention in town. I had friends, but calling someone at 2 in the morning felt humiliating. So I made a decision that still makes my blood boil when I think about it. I spent the night in my car, in my own driveway, outside my own house. I reclined the driver's seat as far as it would go and tried to get comfortable. The rain pounded on the roof like accusatory fingers. Every few minutes, I would glance at my house, at the door that should have welcomed me home, but now stood like a fortress wall. Around dawn, Mrs. Peterson finally emerged to get her newspaper. I rolled down my window, hopping for answers. "Mrs. Peterson," I called out, "do you know what happened to my locks?" She looked uncomfortable, glancing around like she was afraid someone might see her talking to me. "The HOA board came by Wednesday," she said quietly. "They said there were safety violations. They changed the locks on 3 houses this week." "Safety violations? What safety violations?" "You need to talk to Karen Martinez. She is the board president now." Karen Martinez. I knew that name. She lived in the biggest house on Maple Street, the one with the perfect lawn and the white fence that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I had seen her at a few neighborhood barbecues, always perfectly dressed, always talking about property values and community standards. "She left a notice," Mrs. Peterson added before hurrying back inside. But there was no notice. I searched my porch, my mailbox, even the bushes where the wind might have blown it. Nothing. Either the notice had blown away or it had never existed in the first place. Both possibilities made me furious. I waited until 8 in the morning before marching to Corinne Martinez's house. My clothes were wrinkled from sleeping in the car, my hair was a mess, and I probably smelled like desperation and anger. But I did not care. I wanted answers. Corinne's house looked like something from a home improvement show. Perfect green lawn without a single weed. White picket fence with fresh paint. Rose bushes arranged in military precision. Even her driveway looked like it had been scrubbed with a toothbrush. She was outside watering her flower beds when I approached, dressed in designer gardening clothes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She looked up at me with the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "Oh, hello there," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You must be from 1247 Oak Street." "Yes, I am, and I would like to know why I cannot get into my own house." Corinne set down her watering can and wiped her hands on a pristine gardening apron. "Well, that is unfortunate, but you left us no choice after the emergency safety violations we discovered." "What emergency safety violations?" She pulled out her phone and scrolled through photos with the efficiency of someone who had been preparing for this conversation. "Your outdoor furniture was creating fire hazards by blocking emergency exit pathways. Your garden gnomes were unauthorized decorations that violate our aesthetic standards. And your mailbox post was 6 inches too far to the left according to our measurements." I stared at her. "You changed my locks because of garden gnomes." "We changed your locks because you have been flagrantly violating HOA regulations for months. We hired a professional security company to monitor compliance, and your property was flagged as a priority concern." "A security company? You hired people to spy on my house?" Corinne's smile grew wider. "We hired people to protect our property values. This is a premium neighborhood, and we intend to keep it that way." She showed me more photos on her phone. Pictures of my patio furniture, close-ups of my garden gnomes, even a photo of my trash cans taken from what looked like my own backyard. "How did you get these pictures?" "Our security consultants are very thorough. They document everything." "This is harassment." "This is property management. And speaking of which, you now have 47 violations that need to be corrected before we can provide you with new keys." She handed me a manila envelope that looked like it weighed 5 pounds. I opened it to find a list typed in small font that went on for pages. Remove garden gnomes. Repaint mailbox post. Relocate outdoor furniture. Trim hedges to exactly 18 inches. Replace doormat with HOA-approved neutral color. 47 violations, I said, my voice rising. "Are you insane?" "I am protecting our community standards. You have 30 days to complete all corrections and pay the associated fines, or we will begin foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure. You cannot foreclose on my house because of garden gnomes. We can and we will. This is not the first time we have had to take extreme measures with non-compliant homeowners. Ask the Johnsons on Elm Street, or the Wilsons on Pine Avenue, or the Garcias on Birch Lane. My blood went cold. You have done this before. 3 times in the past year. All 3 families eventually decided to sell and move to neighborhoods more suited to their lifestyle preferences. The way she said, lifestyle preferences, made my skin crawl. I was starting to understand that this was not about garden gnomes or mailbox posts. This was about power and control and deciding who belonged in their neighborhood. You cannot just change people's locks without proper notice. We provided proper notice. If you failed to receive it, that is not our problem. I never got any notice. Karen shrugged. We have documentation that notices were delivered. Our security company takes photos of all delivery confirmations. She showed me another photo on her phone. A blurry image of what might have been a piece of paper taped to what might have been my front door. It could have been anything, anywhere. That could be anyone's house. That is your front door, time-stamped and GPS located. We follow all legal requirements. I was beginning to realize that Karen Martinez was not just some power-hungry HOA president. She was running a sophisticated operation designed to push out homeowners she deemed undesirable. The security company, the photo documentation, the massive violation lists. This was systematic and calculated. I want to see the HOA bylaws about lock changes. You can review all relevant documents at our next board meeting, 3rd Thursday of the month, 7 p.m. at the community center. That is 2 weeks away. Then I suggest you use that time to begin addressing your violations. The clock is ticking. Karen picked up her watering can and turned back to her flowers, dismissing me like I was nothing more than a door-to-door salesman. But as I walked away, I caught something in her voice that made me pause. "Oh, and one more thing," she called out. "I would be very careful about making threats or causing disturbances. We have excellent security footage of everything that happens in this neighborhood." That was not a warning. That was a threat. I drove straight to the law office of Sarah Chen, the attorney who had helped my friend Dave with his divorce. Sarah specialized in property law and had a reputation for not backing down from bullies. Her office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, with books stacked everywhere, and a coffee pot that looked like it had been brewing since the 1990s. "HOA lock changes without proper notice," Sarah said, leaning back in her chair after I told her my story. "That is illegal in this state. They need 72 hours written notice for non-emergency situations." Karen claims they left notice. A blurry photo of a piece of paper is not legal notice. We can challenge this immediately. Sarah pulled out a thick folder and started taking notes. "Tell me about this security company." I described the photos Karen had shown me, the systematic monitoring, the other families who had been forced out. Sarah's expression grew more serious with each detail. "This sounds like a pattern of harassment designed to force property sales. That is potentially criminal." "Criminal how?" "If they are using HOA authority to selectively target homeowners for removal, especially if there is financial benefit involved. That could be conspiracy, fraud, maybe even extortion." Sarah started making phone calls while I sat in her office drinking terrible coffee and trying to process everything. Within an hour, She had requested all HOA financial records, board meeting minutes, and documentation of the security company contract. "We need to gather evidence," she said. "I want you to document everything. Every interaction, every violation notice, every photo they show you, and see if you can connect with those other families who were pushed out." I spent the next 3 days playing detective. The Johnsons had moved to Arizona after their locks were changed twice in 1 month. The Wilsons relocated to their daughter's city after facing thousands of dollars in HOA fines. The Garcias sold their house at a loss and moved into an apartment across town. But when I called them, they all told similar stories. Karen Martinez had targeted them with increasingly absurd violations until living in their own homes became unbearable. The security company had photographed them constantly. The HOA board had rubber-stamped every fine and punishment Karen recommended. "It was like living in a police state," Mrs. Johnson told me over the phone. "We loved that house, but we could not fight anymore." I also discovered something interesting about the security company. It was owned by Karen's brother-in-law, and the HOA was paying them nearly $50,000 a year for comprehensive community monitoring services. Sarah's eyes lit up when I told her about the family connection. Now we are getting somewhere. Conflict of interest, potential kickbacks, misuse of HOA funds. "Can we get my locks changed back?" "We can do better than that. We can file an emergency injunction to stop all HOA enforcement actions against you while we investigate, and we can demand a forensic audit of their finances." That afternoon, Sarah filed papers with the county court. By evening, Karen Martinez was served with a restraining order preventing any further actions against my property. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to find my car gone, towed during the night for parking violations. According to the citation left on my driveway, my car had been parked 6 inches too far to the left. Karen was escalating. I called Sarah immediately. She had my car towed from my own driveway. That is retaliation, clear and obvious retaliation for filing legal action. What do? We document it, we add it to our complaint, and we start recording every interaction you have with her. Recording. This is a one-party consent state. You can record any conversation you are part of without telling the other person. I want you to get Karen talking about her plans for the neighborhood, about the other families, about anything that shows this is systematic harassment. The idea of secretly recording conversations felt wrong, but then I remembered sleeping in my car in my own driveway. Karen had made the rules of this game. Now I was going to learn how to play. I went to the electronics store and bought a small digital recorder. Then I practiced using it until I could start recording without looking suspicious. Sarah coached me on what questions to ask, how to get Karen talking, how to protect myself legally. The goal is to get her to admit this is about pushing out undesirable homeowners, Sarah explained. If she talks about property values or neighborhood character or keeping out the wrong kind of people, that gives us ammunition. What if she does not take the bait? Oh, she will. People like Karen Martinez cannot resist explaining how smart they are. Give her an audience, and she will tell you exactly how she is destroying your life. That night, I sat in my living room planning my next move. Karen had declared war when she changed my locks. Now I was going to give her a war she would never forget. I spent the weekend preparing for battle. Sarah had given me a crash course in HOA law, property rights, and evidence gathering. I learned that HOA boards have significant power, but they are not above the law. They have to follow their own bylaws, provide proper notice, and use funds appropriately. Karen Martinez was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Monday morning, I filed a formal complaint with the State Attorney General's office about HOA financial irregularities. The complaint detailed the security company contract, the family connection, and the suspicious pattern of targeting specific homeowners. I attached copies of all the documentation Sarah had gathered. Tuesday, I presented evidence of embezzlement to the district attorney's office. The $50,000 in annual payments to Karen's brother-in-law's security company looked suspicious enough to warrant investigation. The fact that 3 families had been driven out of their homes made it look like a criminal enterprise. Wednesday, I started organizing a neighborhood petition demanding Karen's removal from the HOA board. I went door to door, explaining what had happened to me and the other families. Most neighbors were shocked to learn about the systematic harassment. Many had received minor violations themselves, but thought it was normal HOA business. "I got a citation for my rose bushes being too tall," said Mr. Patterson from down the street. "Seemed ridiculous, but I just trimmed them." "She fined me $100 because my newspaper delivery was 15 minutes late," added Mrs. Kelly. "Said it was creating community disruption." By Thursday, I had 47 signatures on the petition. The irony of that number was not lost on me. Karen had given me 47 violations to fix. Now I had 47 neighbors demanding her removal. But I was just getting started. I began documenting every violation in Karen's own yard using her own ridiculous standards. Her rose bushes were 18.5 inches tall instead of the required 18 inches. Her mailbox post was painted antique white instead of the required pure white. Her sprinkler system watered the sidewalk, creating a slip hazard. I photographed everything with the same obsessive detail her security company had used on my house. Every minor imperfection, every tiny deviation from the HOA rules, every possible violation I could find. Sarah loved it. "You are using their own weapon against them. Perfect." Friday brought news that made my week. The other targeted families had agreed to join a class action lawsuit against the HOA. The Johnsons were flying back from Arizona to testify. The Wilsons were providing financial records showing how much money they lost. The Garcias had kept detailed documentation of their harassment. "This is bigger than just your case now," Sarah explained. "This is about a pattern of abuse that affected multiple families. That gives us much more leverage." I was feeling confident for the first time since this nightmare began. Then Karen reminded me why you should never underestimate a desperate enemy. Saturday morning, I found a certified letter in my mailbox. The HOA was fining me $2,000 for disruptive behavior and harassment of board members. According to the letter, my visits to neighbors' houses and my aggressive confrontation with Karen constituted violations of community peace and safety standards. $2,000 for talking to my neighbors and asking questions about my own case. I called Sarah immediately. She is trying to bankrupt me with fines. This is pure retaliation. No HOA bylaw allows fines for talking to neighbors or filing legal complaints. We are adding this to our lawsuit. How high can these fines go? Legally, they are supposed to be reasonable and proportionate to the violation. $2,000 for talking to neighbors is neither reasonable nor proportionate. Sunday brought an even more disturbing development. I found a note taped to my door. Not an official HOA notice, but a handwritten message in block letters. "Drop this or face consequences. You have been warned. No signature, no return address, but the message was clear. I photographed the note and called Sarah. Someone is threatening me. We need to report this to the police. And we need to assume Karen is escalating because she knows we are getting close to exposing her. What kind of consequences could she be talking about? In my experience, people who abuse HOA power often have other schemes going on. Financial fraud, kickbacks, tax evasion. If Karen is stealing money and using intimidation to cover it up, she might be willing to do anything to protect herself. That night I barely slept. Every sound outside made me jump. Every car door, every footstep, every branch scraping against the window felt like a threat. I was fighting for my home, but now I was starting to wonder if I was fighting for my safety too. Monday morning brought a call from the district attorney's office. They wanted to meet with me and Sarah to discuss the evidence we had provided. The investigation was moving forward. "This is good news," Sarah said. "They would not want to meet if they did not think there was a case." I hung up the phone feeling hopeful. The legal system was finally taking notice. The evidence was mounting. Justice was coming. I had no idea that Karen Martinez was about to unleash her most devastating attack yet. Karen Martinez was not going down without a fight. When I got home from work Tuesday evening, I found another certified letter waiting for me. This one was from a law firm I had never heard of, informing me that the HOA was placing a lien on my house for unpaid fines totaling $8,000. $8,000 for garden gnomes, outdoor furniture, and talking to my neighbors. I called Sarah immediately, my hands shaking as I held the letter. "They are trying to take my house." "A lien does not mean they can take your house immediately," Sarah said, but I could hear the concern in her voice. "However, if they foreclose on the lien, you could lose everything." "Can they do that?" "Legally, if the fines are legitimate and properly assessed, yes. But these fines are clearly retaliatory and excessive. We can challenge them." "How long do I have?" "The foreclosure process takes months, but Karen is clearly trying to pressure you into backing down. She wants you scared." I was scared. $8,000 was more than I had in savings. The thought of losing my house, my stability, my future, made me feel sick. But Karen was just getting started. Wednesday morning, I went to the grocery store and noticed people staring at me. Not curious glances, but hostile looks. Mrs. Patterson from down the street actually crossed to the other side of the aisle to avoid me. When I got to the checkout line, the teenager bagging groceries looked at me like I was dangerous. "Are you the guy causing problems in Maple Grove?" he asked. "I am the guy fighting illegal HOA harassment," I replied. "My mom says you threatened the board president." I realized Karen had been busy spreading rumors about me. By Thursday, the story had grown. I was not just causing problems. I was unstable, dangerous, a threat to the community. I discovered how far the rumors had spread when the security company started showing up at my house. Every day, sometimes twice a day, a car would pull up and a uniformed guard would walk around my property, taking photos and making notes. "We are conducting wellness checks," one of them told me when I confronted him. "The HOA has expressed concern about your mental state." "My mental state is fine. Get off my property." "We have authority to inspect all HOA properties for safety violations." I was living under surveillance in my own neighborhood. Every time I went outside, someone was watching. Every time I talked to a neighbor, someone was taking notes. It felt like living in a police state. Friday brought the worst news yet. Sarah called me at work, her voice tight with anger. "Corinne filed a restraining order against you." "A restraining order for what?" "She claims you threatened her during your recorded conversation. She says you told her you would make her pay for what she did to you." "That is not what I said. I told her I would hold her accountable through legal channels." "I know, but the judge granted a temporary restraining order based on her testimony. You cannot go within 300 feet of her or her property. That includes the community center, where the HOA meetings are held." "Exactly. She has effectively banned you from participating in the HOA meetings where they are deciding your fate." I was furious. Corinne had twisted my words, lied to a judge, and used the legal system to silence me. But the worst part was that it was working. I could not attend HOA meetings. I could not confront the board. I could not even drive past her house without risking arrest. "There is more," Sarah continued. "Corinne hired a high-powered law firm from the city. They are billing the HOA $300 an hour for legal representation. The HOA is paying for her lawyers with money from the community fund, which means she is using your neighbor's HOA dues to pay for lawyers to destroy your life." I was starting to understand the full scope of Corinne's operation. She was not just stealing money from the HOA. She was using HOA funds to pay for her legal defense against the very charges of stealing HOA funds. Saturday morning brought a call from my homeowner's insurance company. They had received claims about property damage I had supposedly caused to several neighbors' yards. The claims totaled $15,000 in damages. "What property damage?" I asked the claims adjuster. "Landscape damage, broken sprinkler heads, damaged fencing. Do you have any knowledge of these incidents?" "I did not damage anyone's property." "We will need to investigate. Until then, your policy is under review." I hung up the phone feeling like I was drowning. Corinne was attacking me on every front: financial, legal, social, even my insurance. She was trying to destroy my life completely. Sunday night, I got a call from Mrs. Johnson in Arizona. "I heard about what Corinne is doing to you," she said. "I wanted to warn you about something." "What?" "Right before we sold our house and moved, Corinne arranged an emergency HOA board meeting. They voted to begin foreclosure proceedings against us. The meeting was held at her house, and only board members who supported her were notified." "That is illegal." "Of course it is. But by the time we found out about it, the process was already started. We could not afford to fight it anymore." I realized Corinne was planning to do the same thing to me. An emergency meeting, a foreclosure vote, and then I would lose everything. But this time, she had picked the wrong target. Monday morning started with the sound of cars pulling up outside my house. I looked through the window and saw official vehicles with government plates. Men and women in suits carrying boxes and cameras. For a moment, I thought they were coming for me. Then I realized they were heading toward Corinne's house. I watched from my window as investigators from the district attorney's office executed search warrants on both Corinne Martinez's home and the HOA office building. They carried out boxes of documents, computer equipment, and filing cabinets. The search lasted 6 hours. Sarah called me around noon with news that made my heart race. The DA's office has officially charged Corinne with embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. They raided her house this morning. I saw the whole thing from my window. The evidence you provided was the key. The recordings, the financial documents, the pattern of harassment. They have enough to build a serious case. I felt a mixture of relief and vindication. After months of feeling powerless, The legal system was finally taking action. But I also felt nervous. Cornered animals are dangerous, and Karen Martinez was definitely cornered. Tuesday brought more good news. The restraining order against me was dismissed after the judge heard the recorded evidence of my actual conversation with Karen. The recording proved I had never threatened her with physical harm or violence. The judge was not happy about being misled, Sarah told me. Karen's credibility is seriously damaged now. Wednesday was even better. 3 members of the HOA board resigned in disgrace after the district attorney's office revealed their complicity in the harassment scheme. They had rubber-stamped Karen's violations without question and approved the security company payments without proper oversight. They are trying to save themselves, Sarah explained, but they are still liable for their actions as board members. Thursday brought shocking personal news about Karen. Her husband filed for divorce and kicked her out of their perfect house. Apparently, he had not known about the embezzlement or the harassment campaign. When investigators showed him the evidence, he realized his wife had been lying to him for years. She is staying at a hotel now, Sarah told me. Her husband changed the locks on her own house. The irony was perfect. Karen Martinez, who had changed my locks to keep me out of my own home, was now locked out of her own home by her own husband. Friday brought news about the security company. They were facing criminal charges for harassment, fraud, and operating without proper licenses. The state was investigating all their contracts, not just the one with our HOA. Your case exposed a whole network of corruption, Sarah said. They were running similar schemes in at least 6 other neighborhoods. I was amazed. What started as a fight over garden gnomes had uncovered a criminal enterprise that spanned multiple communities. Karen had not just been stealing from our HOA. She had been part of a larger operation designed to harass homeowners into selling their properties. Saturday brought the news I had been waiting for. The district attorney's office had traced over $50,000 in embezzled funds from Karen's various schemes. Money that was supposed to go toward neighborhood improvements had been diverted to pay for the security company, legal fees, and personal expenses. She owes the HOA $50,000, Sarah told me, plus penalties and interest. Will we get that money back? The DA is working on asset recovery. They are going after her bank accounts, her cars, even her jewelry. Sunday was quiet, but I could feel the storm building. Karen had been arrested, charged, and abandoned by everyone in her life. Her perfect world had collapsed completely, but I knew she would not go down without one final fight. I was right. Monday morning, I received a call from a blocked number. When I answered, I heard Karen's voice, but she sounded different, desperate, angry, dangerous. "This is not over," she said. "You think you won, but you have no idea what I am capable of. Karen, you need to talk to your lawyer, not me. You destroyed my life. You destroyed my marriage. You destroyed everything I worked for. You destroyed your own life when you decided to steal money and harass innocent families. I was protecting our neighborhood. I was maintaining property values. I was keeping out people who did not belong." There it was, the truth she had been hiding behind bylaws and violations and legal technicalities. This was about deciding who belonged in her neighborhood. "People like me?" I asked. "People like you, yes. People who do not respect community standards. People who think they can do whatever they want." I was recording the conversation, of course. Every word would be evidence in her trial. "I will see you in court, Karen. You will regret this, all of it, I promise you that." She hung up, and I sat in my kitchen holding the phone, knowing that Corinne Martinez had just made one final, fatal mistake. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching Corinne Martinez plead guilty to charges of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. She looked nothing like the perfectly put-together HOA president who had once terrorized my neighborhood. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, and her face showed the strain of a woman who had lost everything. The judge was not sympathetic. "Mrs. Martinez, you violated the trust of your community and used your position to systematically harass and intimidate innocent homeowners. You stole money that belonged to your neighbors and used it to fund your personal vendetta against people you deemed undesirable." Corinne was sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA and all affected homeowners. She would also face 5 years of probation and be banned from serving on any HOA board in the state. I watched her being led away in handcuffs, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because justice had been served. Sadness because it should never have come to this. 2 weeks later, I stood before a packed community center as the newly elected president of our HOA board. I had won in a landslide, campaigning on a platform of transparency, accountability, and respect for homeowners' rights. My first act as president is to implement new bylaws that will prevent the kind of abuse we have all witnessed, I announced to the crowd. No more secret meetings, no more excessive fines, no more harassment of homeowners over minor violations. The applause was thunderous. These were the same neighbors who had once watched me struggle with my locks in the rain. Now they were cheering for the changes I was bringing to our community. The HOA agreed to pay me $50,000 in damages and legal fees. The money helped cover the costs of my fight, but more importantly, it sent a message that homeowners' rights matter. I used part of the settlement to help the other targeted families. The Johnsons decided to move back from Arizona and bought a house 3 streets over. The Wilsons recovered their financial losses and were able to help their daughter with college tuition. The Garcias bought a new home in our neighborhood and invited me to their housewarming party. The security company was banned from operating in our state and faced criminal charges in multiple jurisdictions. The investigation Sarah and I started had exposed a network of corruption that stretched across the region. 6 months after the trial, I was working in my garden when a moving truck pulled up to Corinne's old house. A young family with 2 children climbed out, looking excited about their new home. I noticed they were unloading boxes marked garden decorations and outdoor furniture. I walked over to introduce myself and welcome them to the neighborhood. The husband was carrying a box of garden gnomes. "Nice gnomes," I said, smiling. "Thanks, my wife loves them. The previous owner said there might be HOA rules about decorations, but the real estate agent said the new board is much more reasonable." "The new board believes your home should be your castle," I replied, "garden gnomes and all." Later that evening, I sat on my porch looking at my own garden gnomes, thinking about everything that had happened. Corinne Martinez had tried to destroy my life over these silly decorations. She had stolen money, harassed families, and abused her power to maintain her vision of a perfect neighborhood. But in the end, justice had prevailed. The neighborhood was stronger, the HOA was reformed, and families could live in their homes without fear of harassment or intimidation. I learned that sometimes the worst attacks come from people who are supposed to protect you. But I also learned that one person with courage and persistence can change everything. Corinne Martinez thought she could break me by changing my locks. She did not realize that she had just given me the key to bringing down her entire corrupt system. The garden gnomes are still in my front yard. They always will be. Not because I love garden gnomes, but because they represent something much more important. They represent the right to be yourself in your own home. They represent the victory of ordinary people over petty tyrants. They represent the truth that no HOA president, no matter how powerful they think they are, can lock you out of your own life. Every time I see those gnomes, I remember that night in the rain when I could not get into my own house. And I smile, because that was the night Corinne Martinez made the biggest mistake of her life. She thought she was locking me out. Instead, she had just unlocked her own destruction.